Hello and God bless everyone. I am the Reverend J.O. Smith, continuing with Not the Final Word Bible studies. We have been studying we have been studying Romans in the studies entitled Romans, No Respecter of Persons. We are continuing on, or finishing up chapter 2. This is part 2. And like I said in the previous video, this one's going to be a lot shorter than the previous one, mainly because there's not much left of the chapter, but I only have so many chunks of time in which to get certain things in. So therefore, we're going to finish up chapter 2 and call that, and then get you on the next time and begin into chapter 3, when he really begins to put together the arguments that he was creating in chapters 1 and chapter 2 and bringing it to a finer, grander point. So we're resuming in verse 25 of chapter 2 of the book of Romans. So here we are, reading the King James first and then my personal translation. Verses 25 through 29. For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Therefore, if the circumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his circumcision be counted for uncircumcision? And shall not circumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision does transgress the law? For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Verses 25 through 29, my translation. Because circumcision is useful provided you practice the law, yet provided you are a violator of the law, the circumcision of you becomes uncircumcision. Accordingly, provided this uncircumcision perseveres in the statutes of the law, shall not the uncircumcision of him be estimated unto circumcision? Moreover, shall not the uncircumcision by natural production, by guarding the law against loss, judge you who, through the letter of the law and circumcision, are a transgressor of the law? For he is not a Jew, who is rendered apparent as a Jew, nor is rendered apparent as circumcised in the flesh, but he is a Jew secretively, and the circumcision is of the mind within the spirit, and not in the letter, of whom the praise is not out of men, but out of God. Paul is now trying to back in the theme of the letter. It is not one's race or nationality that God looks at to see who is holy. Remember what I said earlier, bigotry has no place in God, period. It is how one reflects holiness by how one lives his or her life. For the Jew, circumcision is the mark, sign, and seal of his covenant, to help mark Israel as different, as it is as if they have said, we have God's favor. However, Paul makes it clear that one can have an outward show and yet not live up to what the signs and seals of God's covenants represent. If, however, the uncircumcision, the Gentiles, live a life in accordance with God's law, though they know nothing of it, and yet do so by happenstance, what does it say about the learned with those seals and signs, who do not keep the law and yet vaunt in it? Well, that one is more of a Jew than one who is overtly, and that inward Jew gains his praise of God. Some Jews put up a guise of religion, only to gain praise of men. Praise from God comes from those who do God's will, and is something that shines God's glory, even if the Jews did not think it, because the Gentiles did not bear his guise. So in chapter 1, we saw the state of the reprobate sinner, and in chapter 2, we saw the religious sinner. We also have the man in whom the religious sinner calls a sinner, who happens to emulate God's law ignorantly, and who puts the religious sinner to shame. However, there is a more significant point being made. Even if someone obeyed the law, he be Jew or Gentile, this was not what produced a righteous, clean soul. There is something greater needed. However, Paul is going to make a defense of the law, yet show a more significant problem the law could not overcome. And so, in the next video, we'll commence with chapter 3. Like I said, this is going to be a very short video, so that way we could sum up chapter 2 and get us prepared to go into chapter 3 and really get into the heart of the matter Paul is trying to establish here, which becomes the foundation for the rest of the letter. So, with that, I am the Reverend J.O. Smith, and remember, I am not the final word. God bless everyone.